Well, the Founding Fathers wrote a lot about the Second Amendment. Hunting wasn't even in there. Second Amendment was self-defense, defense of the country. Well, let's say we had something like Hurricane Katrina. The police were gone, and neighborhoods, people could band together and provide their own security until the government could get back on its feet. Look at what happened with the Rodney King riots. Police left Los Angeles areas to burn. People were being beaten and murdered. No police, no nothing. You were on your own.
Welcome to Reaching Out. I'm your host, Zack Carter. Please join me as I speak with a diverse group of people to find out their thoughts on religion, politics, and culture. All right, welcome everybody to Reaching Out. Thanks for joining us today. I'm excited. We have Mr. Philip Van Cleave here with us from the Virginia Citizens Defense League to talk to us about gun rights, gun control, whether we should have gun control, whether we shouldn't. I'm really excited to talk with you today, Mr. Van Cleave. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so I just want to get started. Tell us a little bit about yourself, so the viewer.
Okay, sure. I'm the president of the Virginia Citizens Defense League, a gun rights organization, which was founded back in 1994. Okay. In Virginia, because at the time it was extremely unfair in how you would get a concealed carry permit. There were judges that wouldn't give them to women. They said women don't need guns. Some wouldn't give them to men. Well, you're a man. Why do you need a gun? Others gave it to anybody that asked, and so forth. So the group formed then. My personal background is I have a master's degree in computer science. I have my own little software company besides being president of VCDL. I served for 6 years as a volunteer deputy sheriff in Texas, so I've had a little law enforcement experience, which I think was invaluable in what I do now. And then I got involved, like I say, I got involved big time in gun rights in 1996.
Okay, how did you get into that?
Well, basically, the concealed carry law had changed. My organization back then, it was the Northern Virginia Citizens Defense League. It had changed the law. This is before I joined, though. I didn't form the organization. I'm president, but I didn't form it. And so a year before I got involved, they got the law changed where anybody that was a law-abiding citizen could get a permit. You didn't need to beg or plead or show a reason. And so it became more like America. While I was waiting to get my permit, I was reading magazines to decide what kind of concealed carry gun I might want to get. And the more I read these various gun magazines, I kept reading about the Second Amendment. And I realized I'd been lied to by my schools, by the government, by the press about what it really was. They were saying, oh no, it's not an individual right. And I was finding out, no, yeah, it absolutely was. And that infuriated me. Okay. And I decided I was going to get involved in this and do whatever I could to make sure other people understood their rights and protected them. Okay. And so I marched down to the General Assembly, not even knowing who to talk to, where to begin, but I was going to do something. And I ran right into the brand new Northern Virginia Citizens Defense League. They took me under their wing, and it ended up being a marriage in heaven because I lived in Richmond. I could get to the General Assembly and lobby for them because they were mostly from Northern Virginia. So it ended up working out just, it couldn't have worked out better.
Okay, perfect. Well, let me read the Second Amendment real quick for those, because there are probably a lot of people out there that haven't actually read the Second Amendment. So I'll read it real quick. Second Amendment says, a well-regulated militia being necessary for the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. One of the comments I've heard from people that are more for more gun control have said that we don't have militias anymore. We now have a police force. So why do we need, as regular citizens, why do we even need the Second Amendment anymore?
The militia they were referring to in the Constitution was what they called the unorganized militia, which was everybody that was at that time a male between 18 and 45. You were in the unorganized militia. You were just you were expected to have a firearm and expected to know how to use it. The well-regulated part wasn't that the government was overseeing you. It meant you were expected to know how to use that firearm and to train with your neighbors and stuff so that in an emergency you could act as a militia to either defend the country or defend the people if the country were to turn tyrannical at some point in the future, or for self-defense. Okay. So it's understanding who the militia is, and also understanding that clause at the beginning isn't the sole reason for the Second Amendment. It's just one key part about the militia.
Okay. So currently what our society has been talking about lately has been the mass shootings that happened this year. So this topic has been on the forefront of a lot of people's minds. I looked up some stats, and I found that in 2015 there were about 372 mass shootings in America, and mass shootings are defined as 4 people being killed or injured in one shooting. And there's a total of 13,286 people killed by firearms, not including suicides. Do you believe we have a gun violence issue in this country?
The 13,000, you're sure that doesn't include suicides, huh?
What I found where I was looking said that number didn't include.
Okay.
Do you have a different number that you found when you've done your research?
The 13 seems a little high, but let's go with it for now. It's fine. I mean,
Okay.
it's a reason. It's still a reasonably large number considering. We have a problem with people wanting to kill, rape, rob people. That's the problem we have. The tool that's used is a tool. I don't think you would feel any different if somebody came up and say beat your parents to death with a billy club, or if they ran them over in a car intentionally to murder them or to shoot them. What you would care about is why did somebody and who killed my family. But with guns, we get off on a tangent every time. We get off onto the tool.
Okay.
So do we have a gun problem? No, we have a problem with drugs. We have a problem with mental health. Again, if nobody wanted to kill anybody, if nobody wanted to rape anybody, if nobody wanted to rob anybody, would we have any problems at all? Probably not. Life would be like nirvana. You would just go about your life and be careful not to have an accident. But it's not like that. Being a deputy sheriff, I've met the people on the other side, and I can tell you that you can't even fathom how they think. They don't think like you and I.
Okay.
And that's the problem. And the issue is with gun control is you end up passing gun control and you end up affecting really only the people who aren't the ones that are the problem because they obey the laws. A criminal thinks that he will never get caught. That's the founding principle of criminals. That's why they ignore the law. They think, they're never going to catch me. I'm so smart, the police are so dumb. Even if they've been arrested and put in jail 13 times, on their 14th time, they're still convinced that the police will never catch them.
Okay.
And so what we don't want is interfering with good people being able to protect themselves. I will point out that gun control started in this country about the time of the Emancipation Proclamation. That's when it really took off. They didn't want black people that were newly freed slaves, and even a little bit of gun control before where they didn't want slaves to have guns. So all this gun control started. It's got a very bad history to it, and if you look at Jim Crow laws, a lot of those were guns. It was like a white person would have an excuse to own a gun, but the black person would have the same excuse, but the judge would say, oh no, that's not good enough, and then throw him in jail.
Okay.
So even concealed carry started as a Jim Crow thing to keep people from carrying.
Sure. So I know a topic of debate right now is that, okay, so let's say someone agrees with you and says, okay, we should have guns, but don't you believe we should have more stringent background checks? What are your thoughts on that?
If you think about public mass shootings, almost every one of these guys passed public background checks, did background checks with these mass shootings. Cho, he passed 2 of them. The guy in the Texas church passed multiple background checks. The guy that shot up Las Vegas passed background checks. This goes on and on. No, background. Look, in 2010, 72,000 people were stopped from getting a gun because of a background check failure, but most of those were false hits. In 2010, 44 people in the entire country were prosecuted because they failed a background check. And in one entire year, only 44. That's less than one a state. And of those, only 13 did a jury agree should have been, that it was a legitimate deal and actually convicted them of a violation of trying to buy a gun when they were prohibited. So background checks are a waste of time in my opinion. If you look, I was born in '52, and in the '50s and '60s there were no background checks to buy guns, but we didn't have shootings in schools. You didn't hear about these mass public shootings, all that stuff you didn't hear about with no background checks. So I just contend, no, we don't need, it's certainly not universal background checks. Illinois has that.
Yeah.
And look at their gun issues. They had 500 people murdered last year, and they're probably going to break that record this year. And they did a survey, I think if you check, I think it was the Washington Post some 8 or 9 months ago, put an article out that they surveyed 100 prisoners in Illinois and said, where did you get your gun?
Yeah.
2% got them by going through a background check. 98% got them either by stealing the guns, getting them from friends or family, other gangbangers, the black market.
Interesting.
So it did nothing.
So on that point, when I was doing research for this, I hadn't heard of this before. You may know the term straw purchasers.
Yes,
okay,
absolutely.
So, one, could you explain to the audience what a straw purchaser is? And then do you think there should be stricter laws and punishments for straw purchasers?
Well, it's already illegal. It's already a felony. I'm not sure how much stricter unless you want to go for the death penalty. I mean, it's already a felony. Straw purchase is where, let's say that you were a criminal. You could not legally buy a gun. So you come to me and you say, "Hey Phil, I need you to go buy me a gun. You know, here's $600. I want you to go in. I want you to get me a Glock 27 pistol." And now if I go in, I buy the gun, I pass the background check beautifully, but then I turn around and hand you the gun, and that's a straw purchase. In other words, the gun was for you, it wasn't for me. And on the form, when I'm filling it out, I have to lie on that and say, yes, this gun is for me. And therefore, I'm charged with a felony for lying on that form for being part of this straw purchase. That's what it is. And there's really no way to stop it. This is another way. Yeah, criminals get guns all the time with this. Because how do you stop it? The person that comes in passes the background check. How is the dealer supposed to possibly know that that person's going to go out in the parking lot and hand that gun to somebody else? Well, occasionally there's a hint, and I've seen dealers at gun shows turn people down because they said something that made the dealer's ears prick up. Or in one case, the woman was looking at a rifle, and the dealer said to her, he says, "Well, you know, what do you like about this rifle?" And she couldn't even answer anything about the rifle. She knew nothing about it. And he said, "I don't believe you're buying this for you. Clearly, you know nothing. You're about to spend $1,500 on a rifle that you have no idea anything about." I don't think so. Turned her down. She was mad, but she walked away. And I think he was right.
Yeah. Interesting. So, talking about gun dealers, a lot of people in our society talk about the gun show loophole as a way that bad people get guns. So what are your thoughts? What's your opinion on the gun show loophole?
Well, there is no loophole. Loophole implies that if you do something, if you go to a gun show, you can. There's a way around the law. Is what a loophole is. You know, it's a little hole in the fence that they forgot to plug. No, there's nothing you can do in a gun show legally that you can't do outside of a gun show. So, for example, if I was selling a few guns from my collection, I'm not a dealer, and you came up to me, I could legally sell you the guns without a background check. That's not illegal because it's my private property. I'm not making a living at this. I'm merely selling a couple guns I don't want. And maybe you're buying a gun or two for your collection. That's fine. And if we didn't want to do it there, we don't live far apart, you could walk over to my house and I could sell you the gun in my living room. It's all equally legal. On the other hand, if I was a dealer, I could not sell you a gun anywhere without putting you through a background check. The gun show, there is no loophole. The truth is, the reason that term was manufactured by the other side was to create this image in your head that something is broken and needs to be fixed. Something is different, there's this problem. There isn't any. The ultimate goal is universal background checks. I imagine you probably had that on your list to talk about. And the idea would be that when gun show loopholes didn't do anything, and they wouldn't, if they passed a law where you had to do all background checks for every gun sold in a gun show, you'd still have problems. Then they'd say, well, now we got a parking lot loophole because people were going in the parking lot and selling guns. Then you'll have a home living room loophole. Ultimately, they'll get down to saying we got to just ban any sales unless they go through a background check. That's called a universal background check. And there's like 6 states that have that, including Illinois and California and so forth. And again, it doesn't do anything. Criminals aren't going to go through it.
Okay. What do you believe about concealed carry permits. Should ordinary citizens be allowed to carry around guns, or should those guns be left at home for just protection at the home?
Okay, again, speaking from law enforcement side, I believe citizens should have the guns with them everywhere they go.
Mm-hmm.
You don't, I saw over and over that criminals would attack usually when you least expect it.
Mm-hmm.
When it's a bright sunny day and you're going somewhere or you're at home and boom, all of a sudden you're attacked when you least. Criminals like to strike when you're not really paying attention.
Yeah.
Permit. What a concealed carry permit is again, to me, this comes back from the old Jim Crow stuff.
Okay.
It was meant to keep black people from carrying concealed guns, where white people could get a permit easily. In the South, the blacks would be, the judge would say, oh no, we can't give you one for whatever reason. Here's the thing. A permit, if you get right down to it, is nothing more than permission to wear a coat. Okay? Because in Virginia, for example, I can legally carry a handgun on my person, on my hip, in plain view. As long as it's in plain view, you don't need a permit, you don't need training, you don't need government permission.
Really?
You need none of that. Perfectly
you can just
legal.
Carry
right? Yeah, because it's visible to the world. Everybody knows you've got it. And criminals, of course, don't like to do that anyhow. They don't want people to know they've got a gun because, first of all, they're usually not allowed to have one anyhow, and they don't want to advertise it. And two, they like to sneak up on you. So picture that situation. I've got my gun on my hip, plain view. I have no training, or don't need training. I've had tons of training, but you don't need it. You don't need to have a permit or anything. Now I put on a coat.
Yeah.
Now I need training. Now I need to pass a background check. Blah, 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 blah. Why? What difference did it really make? I'm the same person, same gun, same everything, except I got a coat on.
Yeah.
And but we want all these things, and some states are getting rid of it, and they're going towards constitutional carry. And this is something we're pushing again in Virginia. There's like 13 states that have this, or maybe even more now. It basically says if you can own the gun, you can carry it however you want. You can carry it openly, you can carry it concealed. We don't care because you're legally in possession of that gun. And that's where we ultimately want to be. We could keep our permitting system if people want it, or to allow us to travel easily to states that will honor a permit from another state. But in Virginia, we shouldn't need a permit to carry concealed.
Interesting. Okay. Many people blame, and I know you're not part of it. You may be part of the NRA. I don't know if you could be part of the NRA.
I'm a member.
Also.
I'm a member. That's all. I have no clout.
Okay.
I'm just an everyday paying member.
Well, I know. A comment I hear a lot of people saying is that the politicians are in the pocket of the NRA, and really the average person wants more gun control, and really it's these big gun guys that are keeping guns in people's hands, whereas the general public doesn't want it. Based on your research, do you believe Americans are more or less in favor of gun control? What do you? I
think the pro gun rights movement has gotten stronger every year. In America, well, look at Virginia. Before we changed the law in 1995, there were like 3,000 permit holders in the whole state. Now we have almost 500,000. It's a huge jump.
Yeah.
In the United States, we've jumped from a few million permit holders across the whole country to now we're over 17 million permit holders.
Wow.
That's a big, big number.
That's a big jump.
And it's growing. It's continuing to grow. It's not by no means peaked out. More and more people are waking up to being able to protect themselves. The NRA is not they often try to say, they represent manufacturers. The NRA gets most of their money from its 5 million members. All the NRA is doing is it's an organization that represents its membership, and its membership are gun owners like me. And that's all. And the other side has lobbyists.
Okay.
The other, gosh, Bloomberg pours millions into this. He's got whole organizations, and they've got their own lobbyists. So it's rather hypocritical of them to talk about the NRA the way they do when the gun control crowd maybe has even more of a focused interest based upon a few rich billionaires who want gun control and not the populace really wanting it. I think the average mom and pop out there isn't that strong on gun control. Most of them don't vote gun control the way that gun owners vote gun rights.
So if someone was to push back on some of the things that you've said, and I've read some articles that have said states with tighter gun control laws have fewer gun-related deaths, And it seems like there's a lot of research that says, less guns mean less deaths. Is that what you have also seen in your research, or are you seeing something different?
No, I go just the opposite. The places where people can defend themselves, the murder rates and stuff tend to be lower. Let's take a look at a couple states that touch us.
Please do.
All right, let's look at Maryland. Maryland has very, very strict gun laws. In fact, trying to get a permit in Maryland is a major endeavor.
Okay.
It's a may issue state. We're back to where the government can turn you down for whatever reason.
Okay.
And they say to get a permit, you really have to show that your life is in danger or you're protecting a massive amount of money as you're traveling between. But they're more concerned about protecting your money than you. And if you cross from Northern Virginia into Maryland, the gun rate goes up, the murder rate goes up 4 times.
Okay. Wow.
All right.
Yeah.
Now, let's talk about D.C.
Yeah.
In D.C., you talk about gun control. They really have it. You have to register your guns. They have all kinds of restrictions. No assault, quote unquote, assault weapons. Can't have a magazine that holds more than 10 rounds. And until just recently, you had to have incredible reasons to be able to get a permit. Very few people ever got permits up there.
Okay.
You cross from Northern Virginia into D.C., just across the Little Potomac Bridge, and guess what? The murder rate goes up 8 times.
Wow.
8 times with all that gun control. And my argument there is, again, those same criminals could cross that bridge and come into Northern Virginia and wreak havoc there, but they don't. Because it's not that far apart. They're neighbors. They don't. They don't even go into Maryland to cause as much trouble as they cause in D.C. So I firmly believe that your right to defend yourself makes a big difference. A criminal knowing that the victim can fight back will change his attitude. I mean, I personally had an experience where I'm convinced if I didn't have a gun, and in that case, if I wasn't open carrying, I would have ended up getting in a situation where if I'd been concealed carrying, I'd have had to shoot somebody because they were about to either probably rob me.
Okay.
They saw my openly carried gun and everything changed. As soon as they spotted that, everything changed. I didn't touch it. They just saw that I had that gun and everything changed.
So what happened in that situation that you...
I was just out for a walk. Myself and one of our board members from VCDL, we were in Suffolk out for a walk one evening, and it was like 10 p.m. at night, nobody around, and there a person approaching the other way, basically dressed like a gangbanger. That doesn't mean he is, but he certainly had the dress, and we were just kind of watching him as we were talking on the other side of the road approaching. All of a sudden, he looked at us and he reached up under his clothes and was holding on to something, and he kept his hand on that object under those baggy clothes, looked right at us, and he crossed the street to intersect us. Remember, there's nobody around. There was no reason. Or at least on the way over, you would have thought he would have said, "Oh, gentlemen, I have a question. I'm new," whatever. He didn't. He latched on, stared at us, had a hold of something. And Dennis and I, we didn't say a word about that, but our antenna both went off. As a police officer, and for me and for him in the military, he said, we both knew this was a prop. Something was about to go down. He backed up. Dennis slowed down. I kept moving forward. And as soon as this guy came up, he saw both of our openly carried guns. Suddenly, that hand snapped away. Whatever he was holding on to, he immediately let go of it. And he didn't look at us anymore. He immediately looked away and then walked past us and then made a dive down the street behind us. The change in, I wish I had a camera. The change was dramatic when he saw we were armed. So that's just one example. I can give others where people have just the mere presence of a gun on a victim turned the criminal around. I mean, would you choose to mess around with a rattlesnake? You probably would choose not to unless you were absolutely trained in that, because most of us would go, I don't want to take a chance. That sucker could bite me. You tend to do something else. So anyhow, I have no problem with the concept of armed citizens, and I believe that they do deter crime.
Okay. And I know, what is your opinion on, I was listening to someone talking about, she was a female gun rights advocate. She was talking about how we're told in our society that there's a big rape epidemic even on college campuses. and she argues that she should be able to have a gun on a college campus.
Sure.
What do you believe on
Oh,
those things?
absolutely.
Yeah.
Let's take a look. There are college campuses around the country that allow carry, and they've had no problem, zero, as far as the good guys doing something wrong and suddenly becoming bad guys. Here in Virginia, we have Liberty University. Anybody with a concealed handgun permit, student, faculty, staff, guest, if you got a permit, you can carry concealed. And that would be a really bad school to decide to attack, because you would not know.
Yeah.
You would not know who has a gun. You wouldn't know
Yeah.
where to begin. Would
Yeah,
the teacher have one? Very possibly. Would the
Yeah.
student in the class, the janitor down the hall, would he have a gun? Yeah, it's very possible.
Okay.
Other states have been doing this for a long time. Utah even allows you to carry in a K through 12 school. So if you could go in to talk about your 8-year-old daughter to the teacher, and you're carrying a gun, and the teacher's probably carrying a gun. And do you hear of a lot of mass shootings at schools in Utah, either colleges or K through 12? No. It would be a bad state to choose to do an attack like that.
Sure.
So we're all in favor of allowing college carry. In fact, right before Virginia Tech, we had a bill in the House that would have allowed people at all the state universities to be able to carry. It was killed in committee. The spokesman for Virginia Tech said, "Oh, we're glad the bill died. Now the students, faculty, staff, and guests at Virginia Tech can feel safe when they come visit." And after the shooting, all we could say, yeah, feeling safe is not the same as being safe. They're very different things. You can feel perfectly safe jumping out of an airplane until you find out that your parachute doesn't work.
Yeah. Okay.
So,
Sure. So obviously you're in favor of lots of citizens having guns.
Yes.
Sounds like as many as we can get.
Whoever wants to. I wouldn't force anybody to do it. These are people that care about their lives and their families' lives enough to want to go through the hassles of carrying a gun with them. Because there is, it's much easier not to have to pack around a pound or two of metal on you.
Yeah, absolutely. So do you think that people in our country should be allowed to have? So a lot of the times I feel like we're talking about handguns. So let's evolve a little bit.
Okay.
So what about like automatic weapons? Do you think it should be legal for citizens to have automatic weapons?
You can legally own them now, but it's difficult to get them. There's only a limited number of few hundred, somewhere less than half a million.
License, right?
You have to get a permit basically from the federal government, and the guns are expensive because you can't buy any new machine gun that's been made after 1986. So the government created this artificial market where there's only so many guns and so much demand, and the gun prices are very, very expensive to get and own them. But sure, there's no reason that you shouldn't own one of those. You have to train with them. They're not as easy to shoot as people would think.
Okay.
But with proper training, clearly the federal government thinks they're good for self-defense, because I guarantee the Secret Service around the president, they have machine guns under their coats. So with training, they make an excellent self-defense gun. So I think, gun control, you have to understand, for me, gun control just doesn't work. I don't care if we're talking about machine guns, semi-automatics, muzzle loaders, none of it, bump stocks, none of it works to protect us. All it does is mostly a feel-good thing that ends up taking away rights from people in this country that are the good people.
Okay. So is there a line you would draw with citizens owning weapons? So like, can a citizen own a grenade launcher? Can a citizen own a tank? Like, is there a line?
Citizens can own tanks. If you can afford one, you can legally own one.
You can, okay.
Oh yeah. You could even own a grenade if you wanted to pay a $200 tax stamp and go through everything that you had to go through just for one grenade. And once you blow it up, it's gone. You got to wait another 9 months, get another $200 tax stamp. So really, they're not much out there. But my organization's point of view is really centered around the practical tools for self-defense, and so we support. Really, our focus. We're not out there battling for things other than really handguns, rifles, and shotguns, and again, even fully automatics. We would be fine if they decided to change it. And suppressors, silencers. They were very close, and I hope at some point we'll get that fixed so it's easier to get a suppressor. That way your hearing, to do a bunch of stuff. One, it would protect your hearing. Number two, if you're legally shooting on your property, the noise is way down, so that the odds of disturbing your neighbors drops dramatically. So you get less and less people saying, "Oh, I hear these shots all day." Well, you wouldn't hear shots all day. In Europe, they're almost required to go hunting. They want your gun. It's like saying everybody should drive without a muffler on their car. That way, if they go to rob a bank, you can hear the car coming up and you can hear it going away. Or if you're walking, you can hear a car. But we don't do that. We say, no, we don't want all that noise. We want cars to have a muffler. In fact, if you don't have a muffler, you're going to get a ticket.
Yeah.
With guns in America, we're saying, oh no, we want you to have a loud, noisy device, and it's stupid. So we're hoping to even fix that sometime in the near future.
And I've heard with not mufflers, sorry,
suppressors.
Suppressors. Yeah, I was lost in the analogy for a second. Yeah, so I've heard with suppressors though that it's not like the movies where it's like.
Right.
Where it's like really quiet, it actually still loud.
You know a gun went off. You definitely know a gun went off. But it's not. There's a point where if you hear a noise, it won't hurt your ears, and above that, it actually starts to damage your hearing. There's that noise somewhere around 140 decibels where you start hitting something like that, where even a short noise can start to damage your hearing. All the suppressor does is lower the decibels, like from 120 down to maybe 130, 135. 130 decibels is extremely loud. A conversation is something like, I think 60 or 70 decibels. And when you start getting to 80 or 90 of the extended, like loud music going on and on and on, eventually that can hurt you. But as the decibels go up, you can have a shorter duration and not have it damage your hearing. But when you get to a gunshot, it's so loud, if it's unmuffled, it literally, every shot can begin to damage your hearing. And so all they're doing is they're lowering it to where your hearing is safe, but they're not making the gun dead silent at all, not even close. But your hearing is okay. You can fire it without needing muffs on. Interesting. And it doesn't disturb your neighbors, but because it doesn't carry as far. Obviously, the quieter the general noise, the less distance it will carry. You and I talking here is totally going to be inaudible outside that window. A gun going off, you would hear. A gun with a muffler, you would hear, but not nearly as far.
Sure. Okay.
Or a suppressor, I should. The same thing. A muffler suppressor is another word for the same concept.
Sure. Let's take a left turn real quick, and kind of go back to the purpose behind the Second Amendment. I've heard people say that the main reason for the Second Amendment isn't necessarily for just hunting.
Oh, no.
And it's not just to protect yourself from the bad guys, but it's also to protect yourself from the government, from a tyrannical government. Is this something that you believe?
Oh yes. Well, the founding fathers wrote a lot about the Second Amendment when they did it. You can go right to the horse's mouth basically and say, what were you guys thinking when you put it in? They were thinking three things primarily. Hunting wasn't even in there. Not even in there. It had nothing to do with the Second Amendment. Second Amendment was self-defense, defense of the country. Let's say we had something like Hurricane Katrina is a good example. The police were gone, and neighborhoods, people could band together and provide their own security. Until, unfortunately, because of the corrupt police department they had down there, where the police showed up and took away their guns and then left them helpless. That was unthinkable. We passed a law in Virginia after that, so that would never happen here. But the point was the neighborhoods could band together and protect themselves until the government could get back on its feet.
Interesting.
Look at what happened with the Rodney King riots. Again, the police left Los Angeles areas to burn, and people were being beaten and murdered. No police, no nothing. You were on your own. So again, you're able to then stand up and protect yourself. The third thing was, and you hit on it, was the tyrannical government. Should the government ever be taken over through a coup or something, to where suddenly they were trying to take away all of our rights? They were putting us on curfews. They were saying no more free speech, no more going to church, all that stuff. There would be enough people out there armed that would go up against that kind of government and return it back, take it over, destroy it, and bring it back to where the Constitution was. We're back to freedom and liberty and all that. It's happened in America. They had, it was in Tennessee after World War II. There was a town that fraudulently elected a town council. And totally illegal. They did everything. It was all totally under the table, all illegal. This was right after World War II. Okay. And literally, people returning from the war got together, all well trained, and using firearms, they overthrew and took over and restored their government. This was in Tennessee. Can't remember the name of the town right now. It'll come to me later.
Yeah.
But this is just an example of where it happened in America. And that was on a small scale.
Yeah.
You know, normally you don't think of people just deciding to take over the government. No, this would have to be something of major thing that the government's done, where it's clearly gone tyrannical and enough people agree.
Yeah.
And so the idea is that the government would be dissuaded from ever doing that, knowing that there are, in this country, we've got at least 80 million gun owners, and we've got 300 million guns.
Yeah.
You know, it'd be tough to confiscate that.
Just a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah. And it wouldn't work anyhow. We're not allowed to have any crack cocaine, and it's all over the place. If they said no guns at all, it'd still be available.
I've heard the argument kind of pushing back on, you know, defending ourselves against a tyrannical government is ultimately at the place we're at nowadays. They have weaponry and they have access to information that no one would really be able to stand against them.
Well, I'll put it this way. That's kind of what Russia was thinking back when they went into Afghanistan. And you had a bunch of, sheep herders with AK-47s and stuff were able to kind of slow down the Russian army pretty well. When you've got millions of people, there's so many more of us than there would be the military. Also in America, you'd have to consider how many in the military would turn against their own people. There wouldn't be many that would do that, but there probably would be a few. And but I strongly disagree. I mean, just rifles and handguns everywhere would be a big deterrent to the military. You know, if we're talking 5 people trying to protect the country against a tyrannical government, no, they're going to be toast.
Yeah.
But what happens if you've got hundreds of thousands or millions? Then how quickly can you put an end to that? And that's why you want people to have weapons that are at least on par with the government.
Yeah.
You know, that's another reason maybe we should have fully automatic rifles if they have fully automatic. Because the founding fathers would be all for that. People were carrying the weapons of the day back when the Second Amendment was written. You were carrying the equivalent of what the military carried. Yeah. The government knew that and they were fine with that. It's something we hope never happens, but I wouldn't be so quick to write off what the brave citizens of America could do in a situation like that.
Interesting. So we just had this major election in Virginia. How do you think this recent election, because it was predominantly Democrats that were put into power in Virginia, they tend to favor more gun control. How do you think the recent Virginia elections will affect our gun laws? Well,
it's certainly not going to make our job any easier protecting our rights. I find it, again, interesting that the Democrats have become the party of gun control. They weren't always that way. It wasn't that long ago when a lot of Democrats in office were very much supportive of the Second Amendment. John F. Kennedy was a member of the NRA, you know. But over the last 10 years or so, it's like, things have changed. I know our current governor had a few people primary because he didn't think they were far enough on the left for him, and he got them kicked out of office. So unfortunately, the Democrats have become more polarized, going against one of our constitutional rights. They and the Republicans should be battling to see who can be the most, protect our rights the most, but they're not. One party's saying we'll try to protect the right, and the other one's saying, oh, we should take the right away. It's like, it's a very goofy setup right now the Democrats have put themselves in. And yeah, it's going to hurt because, they oppose, pretty much anything that's gun rights related. So, I don't know that the election was so much about guns as it was about, they were saying, I forget what year it was, 63 or something, that Virginia's governor has always been the opposite party of the newly elected president. So, I guess we kept that tradition going. Okay. But whatever, it's not going to be easy.
Okay. And what do you have any predictions on gun control, gun rights in the future for America? Do you see a direction, a trend that it's heading?
Well, the problem is with the Democrats locking on really against gun rights and getting worse and worse at that, I see a major conflict coming because I see generally the country moving more for gun rights, but yet a party and some politicians moving the other way. So something there's going to be some serious headbutting at some point, I think, over this issue, because the two are not easily resolved. People say, well, gun control. Well, we've got gun control. It's not like we don't have gun control. Go buy a gun sometime from a dealer and you'll learn about gun control. We've got lots of it. We shouldn't have any of it. We got tons of it. And for the gun controllers, it'll never be enough. Not until we lose our guns. And that's where the dichotomy comes. And there are those people like me that are simply never going to accept that.
Okay. Well, I'm going to do one more question,
okay.
And then we'll head to the bonus interview section and have a little fun. This has been very informative. Once again, thanks for coming today. Is there anything that we didn't discuss today? Anything that you think the audience needs to know about gun rights, about gun control that we may not have covered already?
We covered a lot of bases. No, I think that's all I can think of right now.
Yeah. Okay. I tried to cover as much as I could.
Yeah, it's actually a fairly extensive thing. I think the main things that we covered that I had been concerned about was the history of gun control. I think people need to understand that and the roots of it.
Where should people go to? Where are the best resources if people want to dive into this topic that they can head to learn more about?
Well, they can go to our website and learn about Virginia gun laws and so forth up there. It's VCDL, as in Virginia Citizens Defense League.org. All kinds of information up there about gun laws in Virginia, how to get a permit, self-defense laws, all of that's covered up there. There are quite a few different sites out there that provide facts on gun rights. Again, they can go to the NRA, look at some of the stuff they've got listed there. Learn a lot about about history and how looking at gun rights across the world and understand. The United States has more guns per capita than any other country.
Yeah.
But if you look at the world, we're number 112 in the murder rate. So countries that have extreme gun control are at the very, very top of that list. Yeah, okay. Yeah. It's not guns; it's social issues that. In fact, they say even in America that if you look at where our crimes are committed, it's really just 2 counties account for half of the crime in the entire violent deaths in the country due to firearms.
And where's that?
That I don't remember which. It's probably Chicago being one of them, and there was another. I don't know if it was not Detroit, but something of that. These were big counties that accounted for a lot of deaths. And if you look at a map of where these things happen, they tend to be fairly predictably in poor areas. And again, it's more about culture and people you're around and people you know than it is the tool that was used or is used.
Okay.
There's some interesting studies, a lot of information out there if you look for it.
Great, perfect. And by culture, I know I have a lot of people that might be black listening.
Sure.
They might hear when you say culture, black people. Do you mean specific races, or are you just saying culturally? Because you can have different cultures within different races.
It's mostly poor areas. It doesn't matter if it's black, white, or whatever. Although disproportionately, there's a lot more poverty and a lot more drugs and stuff in the blacker areas. And this is the other thing that's a big puzzle to me. Our organization has reached out to minorities for years, and we have black members, but we don't have very many. We certainly don't have them in the percentage that the black population makes up in America. I don't understand that. If I was a black person, I would be so into the Second Amendment. And those that are in our group are that way. I would say I never want ever to have the concept of slavery or any of the other stuff that went on, the Jim Crow laws, all the things that happened. I want my family to be safe and protected, and I don't want anybody that doesn't like my skin color to do any harm to me. And that would go for any skin color, for that matter. Yeah. And I don't understand it. I only understand a little of it, and part of that is a cultural thing. There's a book called Black Man with a Gun, written by a black preacher, and he covers a lot that was certainly useful to me because I'm white, about the culture there and why, because of things that happened after the Civil War and how if a black man did have a gun, he was tended to be a target by the police, target by other people that didn't want him being able to protect himself and have as much freedom as everybody else. And it got a lot of the black women frightened of losing their men, losing their sons, losing their husbands, losing their fathers. So they became very anti-gun because to them, even though the gun could defend the family, if the father had it, it was something that could cause them to be killed, a target. Yeah. But those days are getting way behind us now, and I'm really hoping that more in the black community will step up and begin to look at guns differently and understand it's a way of protecting their family, that the police want to be there to help people, but they can't get there every time. And some of the neighborhoods that people live in, they need a gun far more than I do because they can't afford to live in a nicer area. And I feel sorry for these single mothers and stuff. I mean, they become victims all the time, and so many of them just don't understand the importance of gun rights. I'm hoping over time some more of not only the blacks but other minority communities will be waking up to self-defense.
Interesting. Well, that's a good place to end the major interview. I love it. Okay, so let's start the bonus interview. We'll have a little fun, and then we'll get you on your way. I know you got a lot of things to do. Yeah, well, let's start the bonus interview. Have a little fun. What is the most useless talent you have?
Most useless talent.
The most useless talent you have.
That's a good question. I don't know. I'd have to stop and think about that. I've probably got a few things that that I do that aren't. We do a lot of things for fun that have no bearing on anything else. But you just caught me off guard. I don't know.
Okay.
Try a different question. I mean,
that's
what I wish you'd have said. I'm going to ask you and I would have sat down. My wife could give you a longer question. You're asking me. Ask her.
Ask her about that. Okay.
She'd have a dictionary.
What is one thing you bought? What's the worst purchase that you've ever made of anything?
Well, it was probably a movie ticket to Transylvania 5000 or whatever.
Was it a movie?
Oh yeah, it was I think a movie. It was like, oh my God, I can't believe I wasted even a penny on this stupid thing.
Okay. So if you died today, what would have been your greatest achievement?
I think protecting the rights of people to protect themselves.
That's your legacy.
I would say that I was a part of that. But it's such an important thing. Life is so important that I think that would be a great way to be thought of.
Okay. If you could be an expert in one niche field that you're not currently an expert in, what would you be? What's something that interests you that you wish you knew more about?
Well, I love science.
Yeah.
But at one time I was going to be my major was in physics, but then I saw computers, and the first day of college I changed my major to computers. I said, "Wow, that's cool." But something I'm not doing and have not done. Well, I was a volunteer deputy sheriff. I really enjoyed that. I wouldn't mind being a policeman. I was a fireman for a while, a volunteer fireman.
Really? Awesome.
Yeah. I wasn't attracted to that field, but I'll tell you what, that's a dangerous field, and I don't think firemen get enough respect. I know I darn near got burned up in a grass fire that went the wrong way. I learned real quick early on. It was like, wow, lucky we got out of that one.
Yeah. My little brother's actually a firefighter up in Northern Virginia.
Yeah, well, hats off to him. It's dangerous stuff.
Insane. Yeah. So it'd be like maybe firefighting, policing. That would be
policing. I think might be doing it full time or something like that.
Learning about being an expert on it. Okay, great. Well, cool. Well, once again, Mr. Van Cleave, thank you for joining us today. We appreciate you and your perspective. And thanks everybody for listening. And we'll see you again next time at Reaching Out with Zack Carter. Hey everyone, thanks for listening to this episode of Reaching Out. We hope you enjoyed it. Just a reminder, if you haven't already, please head over to our Facebook page, give us a like, leave a comment, Tell us what you want to hear next. We'd love to hear from you. Tell us who you might want us to interview. We're definitely looking for suggestions. Also, head over to our iTunes page and leave a review. Give us 5 stars, and then go and tell your friends about us. We would really, 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 really appreciate it. We're still aiming to get those 150 likes on Facebook and to get these reviews and stars up, so any help is appreciated. Well, I hope you have a great rest of your week, and if not, then, you could listen to some more Reaching Out. Maybe that'll make you feel better. Who knows? I'm not a shrink. Anyways, farewell, toodles, arrivederci.